Hey everybody, Ben here. I had several people ask questions about my force feedback settings that I use in Project Cars 2, so I decided to make a video explaining them. I drive with a Logitech G27, so these wheel settings are most applicable to that and the G29, which is basically identical, and probably most other Logitech wheels, and some of this stuff is applicable probably to all wheels. So early on, I started with the Immersive force feedback flavor. I think that's the default that it comes with. And they say it, tries to replicate the feel of road surfaces and things like that as experienced in the real world. That sounded good, but the problem with it is that I found it was much too heavy in terms of the force feedback effects and just overall wheel feel was really far too heavy, especially in longer races. The problem with this is that, especially in bumpy corners, it makes quick realignment of the wheel or quick catching of slides very difficult. You have to fight against really, really strong force feedback effects, so you can't catch slides quite as easily. It makes it hard to be very consistent. Also, it really made the wheel run quite hot. So I figured that probably wasn't the best in the long run, especially if you want your hardware to last for quite a while. So it really worked the motors too much. What I did is I decided to change to the informative setting, and this was probably the most important change overall. The informative setting, it's designed to tell you what's going on, but not to rip your arms off, basically. So you get a feel for bumps, curbs, what the tires are doing, and how the car is sliding, but it's not as heavy. The most useful change I made was switching to the informative flavor. This sets the force feedback, particularly the road effects, such as bumps and curbs, at a more reliable and reasonable level. I also turned down the force feedback gain. Gain is kind of the overall strength of force feedback effects. It, I think, starts at 100 by default. I turned it down to 88. When you switch to informative, everything's backed off quite a bit. So 100 on informative is not the same as 100 on whatever immersive is. It was already quite lighter, but I lightened it up just a bit more. All this helps prevent force feedback clipping, and again, the heat is reduced and you're able to be more consistent. It allows you to react more quickly to losses of traction, and particularly things like sliding. You can catch slides much easier. You still know about the bumps, crests, and curbs, though. You still feel that, but it's not quite as heavy. Finally, we have the volume, tone, and FX settings. I slightly increased the volume setting. This adds a bit of weight to the wheel. I felt that the standard informative, when you were driving straight or in a constant radius corner, it didn't feel quite heavy enough, like the wheels were resisting turning. This is different than the bump forces, though. This is, heavy in the sense that I can feel that the wheels are turned and they want to resist that turning. So it was too light to begin with, so I turned it up to about 65 here, and I now feel like more like a realistic steering wheel, where it's resisting your turning and wants to go back to straight. The tone setting either makes the bumps more prominent or the tire side forces more prominent, the cornering forces. I didn't need to change this much on the informative setting. I shifted from 50 to 54, more towards the tire slip and side load side of things. And this is just personal preference, but I prefer to feel what the tire is doing rather than have the bumps and things like that more pronounced. Finally, the FX setting. So this is all of the kind of added force feedback features that tell us about what the road surface is like. So are we running over a curb? Are we going over a bump or a crest? These are generally vertical forces that have to be replicated on a wheel by side-to-side movement. I turn these down a bit. They're already reduced in the informative setting. You want to know that you're running over a curb, right? Or that there are bumps on the road. That is important. But you don't want them to be so strong that when you're mid-corner, you have to fight against them, or they knock the wheel to the side and affect your steering angle. So turning this down a little bit makes keeping steering angle mid-corner much easier and makes catching slides much quicker. Overall, I found these settings to work well for me, but you might want to make minor tweaks, especially if you prefer certain forces over another. I tend to want to feel what the tires are doing and which way the car is sliding. The road surface is less important to me, especially once I get a feel for where the bumps are in a track. I know them, and I know that in this corner there's a bump here, or the surface changes there, things like that. One useful thing you can do, though, is you can actually assign keyboard or on your wheel different buttons that will increase the force feedback volume or decrease it, and increase the tone or decrease the tone on the fly. So if you want to adjust these to your own preference, you can do a lap and keep driving, and on the fly change these settings up or down and feel what it's like side by side. All in all, this setup's allowed me to be more consistent. It's also had the benefited effect of decreasing the chatter from my wheel. The Logitech uses a geared force feedback system, which can be kind of loud if the effects are too strong. It'll chatter the wheel back and forth. It also has the benefit of running much cooler. I recently did a full 24-hour race, and I had no issues with wheel cooling. It barely got warm at all to the touch, compared with earlier when the strong force feedback was making the wheel run very, very hot. So it'll probably help the longevity of your hardware in the long run. I hope these settings give you a baseline to start from. Remember, driving feel is somewhat subjective, and your needs may vary based on your driving style. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And thank you for watching. I'm hoping to do more sort of tutorial videos. I'm not an actual racing driver, but I've been sim racing for about 15 years now, so I've picked up a few things along the way. So I'm hoping to pass on some of that knowledge. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll be updated with my latest videos, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.